Thank you very much, Randy. As always, great to be in the studio as we answer your questions throughout the United States and Canada. Indeed, questions are coming in from around the world. As always, the number to dial, 888-ASK, numerically 888-275-4265. Our contact information is always on the web, equip.org, via the mail, Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. And resource consultants are standing by, 888-7000 and the letters CRI. As I watch the news media, I'm increasingly troubled by the rhetoric. And this is rhetoric that is coming not only from the left, but rhetoric that is coming from the right. Over and over again, I'm hearing this mantra that Islam is a peaceful and a tolerant religion. As Clinton put it, Islam is not our enemy. There is no clash of civilizations. And what always troubles me the most about this is I know full well, as most people do, that people like Tony Blair, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and even the pundits from the right know full well that what they're saying is not true. As I've said many times, there are peaceful and tolerant Muslims, but Islam is clearly not a peaceful and tolerant religion. And that is not just a matter of opinion. It's based on the clear consensus of historical sources, which may or may not be wholly accurate, but they are most certainly regarded as accurate by all true Muslims. And I think that point has to be underscored. As Clinton, Blair, Obama, and a host of others know all too well, the Quran, the consensus, and the traditions do not mask, as they have, the murders perpetrated by Muhammad in Medina. And as they are familiar with the horror of Hitler's death squads, so too they are fully aware of the hundreds of innocent Jews of Medina. Jews who were forced to kneel in trenches filled with bodies and blood, and then brutally beheaded, knowing their widows and children would suffer sexual servitude and forced labor at the hands of Muhammad. Likewise, they know that scarcely 2 years after Muhammad's death, Muslim hordes massacred multiplied thousands of Christians in Syria, very much like they are being massacred today. And then in that ancient period of time, during the time of Muhammad, only a few years after his death, the massacre of monks in the monasteries of Mesopotamia commenced. And of course, during the next 300 years, the Islamic imperialists succeeded in subjugating 2/3 of the Christian world. Remember, this is in sharp contrast to Christianity, which advanced by the testimony of the word. Islam did not. Islam advanced by the tyranny of the sword. In time, the threat became so acute in Christian lands that despite the Great Schism of 1054, you'll recall that Emperor Alexius of Constantinople begged the Western pontiff to come to the aid of the beleaguered Eastern Church. And thus it was that in 1095, Pope Urban II formulated the First Christian Crusade. And while historical revisionists like Clinton and Obama have cynically recast the Christian Crusades as imperialistic ventures, that was never their intent. Far from a colonization effort, the Crusades were, well, unfortunately, an ill-fated attempt to defend Christian holy sites in Palestine and then to provide a secure environment for future Christian pilgrimages. In any case, the relief spelled by the Christian Crusaders was, of course, short-lived. In 1244, Muslims regained Christian holy sites. They murdered thousands in Caesarea. They put thousands more to the sword in Antioch. They sold tens of thousands into slavery. And by the dawn of the 14th century, the Crusades were history, but the Muslim horror is not. It is with us today, and unless we understand the truth, which involves not only terrorist attacks, but what I talked about a few days ago, migration without assimilation. It is the python swallowing its prey with a long and slow digestion, as has been well said. So we need to be well informed. We need to, in this epoch of time, be willing to stand for truth no matter what the cost. I was thinking before I came into the studio again about Metropolitan Chrysostomus. This, of course, was the famous scene that took place in a macabre massacre in Smyrna, one of the ancient cities of the Roman Empire. Remember John writing to the city of Smyrna when Smyrna was in the epicenter of a Caesar cult? Well, then think about what happened to Smyrna less than a century ago when Chrysostomus was pulled by his beard, his eyes having been gouged out through the streets of Smyrna. And even when he raised his right hand to bless his attackers, they savagely cut his arm off. And of course, he died, battered and beat to death. Question for all of us today is, are we willing to stand for truth no matter what the cost? This is not just about self-preservation. This is about the cause of Christ. We are not to advance it like the Muslims do, with brutal acts of terror. We are to advance it as Christians have always done, who adhere to the sacred name of Christ. And that is in concert with what Jesus Christ himself did when Peter cut off the centurion's ear. Jesus healed the centurion and told Peter to put away the sword. My kingdom, he said, is not of this world. We must ever be mindful of the fact that we are on our way to another kingdom, that this universe is going to be transformed. In the meantime, we're called to stand for truth in the battle, not only for truth, but the battle for life. I'm talking about the engrafted life of Jesus Christ, which we can experience even now. It's the kind of life that Chrysostomus experienced, and why he could raise his hand as he was being beat to death and bless his accusers. He knew where he was going. Question is, do we? Is our faith just an intellectual head fake, or is our faith a genuine faith that is far more than simply an insurance policy that gets us out of a bad place and gets us into a good place, but rather a means by which we can experience Christ's life now, a means by which we can become partakers, indeed are partakers, of the divine nature.